Welcome to this week of Annan in Depth. I am so excited to bring on my guest today. Of course, you all know Sam Neves, my co-host and permanent guest. And we also have with us Katia Reinhert, who is Associate Director of the Health Ministries Department for the Global Seventh-day Adventist Church. Katia, thank you so much for being with us. Sam, thank you for being with us.
It's great to be with you guys.
Today, we're so excited to talk about our topic. It's a very practical topic. For the past couple of weeks, we've delved into some theological issues, but today we're going pure practicality, and we are going to talk about some of the fake news surrounding health. Some of the things that we've heard are healthy, and some of the things that we've heard are not healthy. And then we look at the news the next day, and then we find out that, in fact, there's another study that shows the opposite, and it can get confusing and overwhelming, and no one knows what to believe. So, Katia, I'm going to talk to you a little bit first. Why is this something that's so important for us to talk about right now, this fake news of health? Why is it so important for us to have this conversation today?
Well, in general, it's important anyway because people make decisions based on information they read on social media, on many different forms. But right now we are during a pandemic, and that just makes it even more important because it's very easy for people to start believing something they see or read, or somebody said something to them, and believe that that is true, and that can put their health at risk. It can put the health of their family at risk, their community, and even depending on what it is that they believe, it can actually lead to early death if they really follow through. So we need to be able to weave through this wealth of information out there and kind of find out what is really the best information for me to believe in.
Great. So we're going to go through some of the fake news that we've heard, Sam. Obviously, feel free to jump in and ask some of your own questions or contribute to this conversation. I know you will. So I'm going to start with the big one. And this is the one that we get asked a lot about, right? And that is wine. People ask us this all the time. Well, in every study I read, it says that alcohol is fine, especially red wine, right? That it lowers the risk of cardiovascular disease. And I actually Googled it, is wine healthy? And the Google answer told me, the Google answer at the very top, it says that, which is the source of all knowledge, right? This is what we believe. This is what is the source of our knowledge. It told me that to have like a glass of red wine a day lowers cardiovascular disease by 25% and lowers the risk of cardiovascular mortality by 51%. Now, as Seventh-day Adventists, we believe that any alcohol is bad. So, Katia, can you talk to us a little about what are some of the factors that went into some of these studies and some of the things that we're finding out now that maybe make this a little bit untrue?
Yeah, well, this is a very important topic because indeed, over the last, I would say, decade or so, we have had lots of studies that came out with this information. Now, mind you, as you said, from decades now, we as the Seventh-day Adventist Church, based on inspiration and also based on what we have seen in our studies among our group, we know that actually alcohol is not a good thing. There's many other issues related, not just health, but socioeconomic related, for the community and everything else. But when these studies came out, people were like, so is it now? Is it true? Is it good for heart health? And then afterwards, there were more detailed evaluation of these studies and actually meta-analysis done on some of these studies. And what we have found out, and actually another new report has come out after those studies came out, is that there has been a lot of confounders, we call it, factors in some of these studies that were not well explored and explained that could have altered the results. And so, for instance, we have confounders related to socioeconomic status. Sometimes a study on that actually looked at the wealthier people who naturally had healthier habits, and therefore compared to another population of a lower economic status group with more health risks, it would be obvious that the results were related not just to wine, in this case, as you're asking, or alcohol, but actually to some of those behaviors, healthy behaviors. Another confounder is related to the population and the health of the population that was studied in a certain study. They were actually looking at people who actually had worse chronic health problems when they were looking, for instance, at reducing some of the risks. And then people change behavior, and that could actually be the factor, not just the wine. But there are also other issues related. For instance, when you look and study the use of drinking grape juice and the value of a grape juice, nutritional value, we see that some of the same substances that are related to the benefits to our health are also in the grape itself. So you could take those benefits from the grape instead of just the alcohol. And so there are many other things like that that are confounding the results. And actually, because of that evaluation, right now, the latest on this is that there is no safe level of alcohol. This is what has been now published more recently by the scientific community. And so instead of recommending people to start drinking, now the recommendation for us health professionals and health providers is not to initiate somebody on alcohol to benefit their heart health, because actually there is no safe level of alcohol. Now everybody agrees on that.
Right. And I don't want to let it pass to say that, especially if your family has a history of addiction or any type of addictive qualities. Sometimes you may not even know that. So you think you're having a safe amount when, if you have a history or your family has a history of addiction, that could be a deadly amount for you in the long run.
Definitely. Yeah, that is correct. There are people that just that one drink because they have hereditary tendencies. There's all kinds of genetic things that do increase somebody's risk of becoming an addict, actually, if they are introduced to alcohol or to other substances, depending. And so that can actually lead them to a path of addiction. But even, without counting the addiction, just in terms of other issues, like, for instance, pregnant women, we already know that they should avoid alcohol. Why? Because it does impact the fetus and what's going on in their life and their health and development. So obviously it also does have impact in the brain and other parts of a woman's body, just like it does with anyone who drinks. So anyway, for various reasons, they said there's no safe level, but certainly the addiction is an important piece on this.
Yeah. I want to talk a little bit about changing trends, because this is sort of something that I think wine is included or alcohol is included in this, and that is changing trends. When I was growing up, everybody thought that the best way to have a good, healthy meal was to eat pasta, right? Which we all love. We all love pasta. The idea of bread and pasta, this was a healthy thing. And now nobody wants to eat pasta. Nobody wants to eat bread. Bread is bad. It turns into sugar and it makes you fat and it makes you sluggish, and we should all avoid bread and only eat meat and vegetables. And then now intermittent fasting is a thing. We should fast for 36 hours, then we will eat anything we want to eat, and then we will stop eating and we will not eat again for 16 hours or whatever it is. And so there is a changing trend in diets that is, can give you whiplash. And I know I've seen it in my family, even with me, and I'm sure every one of us has seen something that we've latched onto in hopes that something might help us be a little bit more healthier. And so Katia and Sam, both of you, have you guys seen this? And how can we evaluate some of these trends and get a little bit of stability into our lives as we're working towards living a healthier life?
There are two things here that I see. The first is the nature of science. The second is how that is communicated. So let's start with the first. Science, by definition, is we are going to test and predict for the purpose of testing and predicting. And that's what we're going to do. We're going to test this, and we're going to test this, and we're going to test this. And then we're going to find the results, and we're going to clash those results with whatever other people are finding. And this is why peer review is so important. And we're going to keep trying to research until we get to the truth about a particular issue. Science is obsessed with getting to the truth, truth being a key word here. Then, by definition, you will have to have disagreement within science. If everybody agrees with everybody, there is no science. Why would you start a new research if you're quite happy with the results of the previous ones that were done? So it's at first you have a lower resolution, so you're more high up, and the 10,000, the 30,000 feet view, so to speak, we pretty set on those for now, such as, exercise is good, sleep is good, eating vegetables is good, all of those things. Are too much alcohol is bad, all of that is at the 30,000 foot view. Everybody kind of agrees. But as you get lower, in other words, higher definition of things, then we begin to disagree on all sorts of things. So, for example, I remember following the news, year on year about tomatoes. Tomatoes are cancerous. A year and a half later, greatest weapon against cancer, tomatoes. And you have this sort of contradicting evidence that is coming through. And partially, in fact, not just a small part, in great part, this is down to news outlets trying to get some people to read their news through clickbait. And I have, there are plenty of examples of this. The study that Katia mentioned, no alcohol level is safe for you. So all the news outlets in 2018, when they put that out, they put out no safe level of alcohol, global study shows, and so on. And when you look at it, there are less than 800 data points for that global study. So if you want, there are ways in which you can do better studies and going further studies. And if you look at the margin of error, isn't that great? The study happens to agree with us. So we would be ones that would put out the study and say, absolutely right. We've been saying this for 150 years. You should not drink any alcohol. But the nature of science is that there will be another research, and it may provide different conclusions, and we need to measure and test, and the evidence needs to be weighed. So just because science said does not mean it's true. But most of us are not reading scientific journals. Most of us are reading the words that a journalist put together in order to inform you. So this pop science is great part of the problem.
And we're reading the BuzzFeed lists.
BuzzFeed is not science, right? And,
no,
and
it's not.
Don't trust BuzzFeed to interpret science for you, because you can look at data in 1,000 which ways, and you can interpret it in 1,000 which ways. Yeah. So, Katia, you're the specialist here. So that's my view. I don't know if you agree or disagree with that, but tell me.
I agree with a lot of what you said, and I think one problem is that people have this notion that if they see a result or something on the news, as you said, which oftentimes does not really look carefully at the study, that will be true or not true. But the thing is that they fail to know that science actually does not work to prove what is true or not. That's not what science is about. What science is about, there is an observation, people ask a question, there's a hypothesis built, whether or not, something may be true, as you said, try to predict the result. Then you analyze that and you use probability and statistics, which means nothing is actually, when you look at how science is studied, nothing is 100% sure to be true. There's always a margin of error. And what you're trying to say is, what are the chances that this is true? Is it a beyond 95% chance that it could be true? And if it is, then it's statistically significant. That's what makes something to be closer to the truth, or less probably not true. That's what it would be the right way to say it.
So let's define this very clearly. Is science searching for the truth and is humble enough to know that there is a probability that they're wrong? Or
that is how it works.
Okay, then that's fine. Yes. That's what I meant. Yes, science is searching to find out what is true. They're just humble enough to know that there is a probability that they're wrong. Got it.
Correct. What I mean is that nothing is 100% true. Science never will say that. Oh, take this. It is 100% true. No, what statistics say, there is a 95% chance that this is not wrong. So, do you see it? So there's always this is what probability statistics say in terms of, studying, kind of like, I'm giving it in lay terms here. So in other words, that's why there's always the possibility that there might be something else, another study done, more rigid, more rigorous study, because that's the other thing too. There's all kinds of studies. There is a study that's just observational. There is no statistics in probability or further research done that compares things. There's no control group. And so there's several levels of scientific studies. And what we need to know is what kind of level of scientific study is this study coming out with? How many people were in the study? Who supported the study? Who is interested that this information comes out? Who is paying for this study? Is this been a longitudinal study? In other words, are they looking over the years in various data points to find out, what is changing, or is this just a one-time kind of cross-sectional study that just looks at the data point at one point in time? So all these levels make the information that comes out of that study more credible, depending if they advance. So we have levels of evidence, we call it. There is, low levels of evidence is just observational. Sometimes, no information further compared to other groups and other things. But then you go up to the highest level of evidence. And so people in the health, like health professionals like myself, we try to recommend things to people based on the highest level of evidence, not on the low level. And sometimes what you see in the news or, in BuzzFeed, like you said here, or in various WhatsApp information that are coming out, it's something just not necessarily of a high level of evidence that has been peer reviewed, as Sam said, published in, good journals, and evaluated for the weaknesses. Every single study has weaknesses, has issues with it. And people don't talk about those. They like to talk about, the main results, but all of them have issues. And so as researchers, we try to evaluate that. But the normal person normally doesn't know those things,
Right.
and they just believe what they hear. And that's why, as Sam said, we have to be careful.
Well, we live in a sort of a list society, right? Our journalisms have become lists, bullet points. And I say this because this is now the best way to send email, right? If I want to get an email read, what is the way I do it? In bullet points. Because if I write paragraphs anymore, then the chances of it being read and digested go down quite a bit. And so we live in a world where even our journalists are writing in bullet points and lists. So if I'm an average, and I am an average person, I don't have any medical degree. I have a mother who was a nurse, but I did not pay any attention to her medical stuff because it makes me nauseous. So since I am an average person, how can I wade through sort of the lists that I am getting, the news I am getting, the headline, the clickbait, as Sam called it? How can I wade through it? Because what I'm guessing is what's good for me may not be good for you, but there are, as Sam said, overarching truths. So on health. So how can I wade through some of this in order to find out what is really best for me as far as health is concerned?
Yes.
Excellent questions. I have no idea.
You want to start, Sam, or you want me to start?
This is really problematic, and I'll give you the problem, and Katia will give you the solution. I think there are two problems. The first is, as a church, when Ellen White started really putting down on paper what God revealed to her in terms of health, it was so different from what the standard practice from doctors in her day were doing. And when later John Kellogg started, actually turning it into reality in treatments, and the results were amazing, it was very different from what, at the time when she said, don't smoke, there were still people printing, good, respectable doctors printing that smoke will clear your lungs. When she was saying, eat vegetables because they're good for you, there were still news articles in New York saying that, vegetables are likely going to kill you. It was so different that for the birth of our movement, we were basically saying, I know that the scientists and the doctors are telling you this, but we believe otherwise. And we have seen the evidence that if you have sunlight, if you exercise, if you eat properly, if you, et cetera, if you have self-control or temperance, and etc., you will live better. So do you see what I mean? For a good portion of our movement, we were saying doctors and scientists are telling you this. It's just that they haven't caught up yet. Well, as it turns out, science has caught up. And today, every scientist will tell you that exercise is good for you. It just wasn't the case 150 years ago. So that's part of the problem, is that us as a movement, we have been saying for a good portion, well, I know that this is what it said, but we believe the Bible and the spirit of prophecy, Ellen White's writings, have something really special to say about health, and we will follow that because it's better. And now that science has caught up, there are good studies on all of these issues, and so we can quote those studies. It's no longer just a sanitarium running some experiments and seeing good results. Now there are hospitals and universities that are not affiliated with the Adventist Church running other tests and finding similar results. So, Katia, how do you navigate that? Do you see that tension, and how do you navigate it?
I think it's true, Sam, what you said in terms of our roots. I will say, though, that even Ellen White, one of the things that she did do, there were some doctors in her day who were speaking the same language. Not all. The great majority, as you said, had a different line of message. But, there were some doctors, and she actually went to a clinic with her husband of a doctor who did that, Dr.
Wow.
Jackson, and she learned some of the things, on this line. So I would say that even during our early years, there was this notion that yes, science was important, that true science, in line with God's teachings were important. In fact, one of the we from the beginning decided we needed to start nursing schools, medical schools, for people to learn and to be able to understand science and biology, physiology, because that was, as you see in her writing, very, very important and critical. So we never been against that. What we have seen, though, we have seen the important role of helping others understand what true science is and what true health information, or good health evidence-based information is. So over the years now, we still have those three criteria for anything that we believe and teach. First, it should not go against the Bible. Second, it should not go contrary to the principles of the spirit of prophecy. That's the second leg. And the third leg is it should be in line with evidence-based medicine as well.
That's
with
so helpful,
evidence-based
Katia.
information.
That
In
is
other
so
words,
helpful.
when you see health information that goes against the Bible or goes against the counsel of Ellen White, we put a big question mark, because we say maybe science hasn't gotten there yet. Because we have seen over the years, every single little thing has been confirmed by science, which we have taught.
Yeah.
And so we have to keep that in mind. But you're right, because of that emphasis, I would say, on spirit prophecy and Bible as the sole thing. Some people think that we don't subscribe to science or to evidence-based medication or medicine, but we do, and we have always done, but always with balance. And so that's what we still need to do. When we look at information, we say, is this against the Bible? Is it against spirit prophecy? Or is it scientifically based and good evidence? And again, we can talk about what good evidence is, but those are the three things that should guide us nowadays.
And that's what I really appreciate sort of about our message, is its holistic approach, right? So we're not saying that medicine is bad. We are not saying that vaccines are bad. We are not saying that, medical treatments are bad. But we are also saying there's a lot of things that we can do holistically that maybe prevent some of the things that you might have to take medicine for down the road, right? So like, if you are eating the way that you should, if you are exercising the way that you should, if you are drinking a lot of water and getting a lot of sleep and doing these natural things, then maybe you won't have to take the heart medicine later on. Maybe you won't have to take these different medicines as we go forward. So because as I mentioned, we do live in a list culture. I was reading some lists about things that they have said that I read that are unhealthy. And I wanted to talk to you a little bit about it. Well, it wasn't BuzzFeed. It wasn't BuzzFeed. But a couple of things that I have read and I have heard, and I want to get your take on it because I think they're really important to bring up. And we talked about wine a little bit, and I did that first because it's something that we get asked a lot about as members, and in the communication department, we get emails sometimes and they say, well, Jesus drank wine, right? And everybody says it's healthy. So I wanted to sort of get that out of the way and have this other discussion. One of the things that I read about weight loss is that calories are what counts, right? So this is a myth that it's only calories that count. So if you are taking a deficit of calories in, then you are taking out. So if you are exercising or walking or living and burning more calories than you're taking in, then that is the key to weight loss, and you do not need to do anything else. You can take 1,200 to 1,600 calories of cheeseburgers, but as long as you're exercising for 2,000 calories, it's fine. Katja, can you guys talk about this? Sam, you had said earlier, this does not work.
Doesn't work. Yeah.
It doesn't work.
No.
So
Look
can
at
we
me.
talk about
Does
this?
it look like it's working? It's not working. It doesn't work.
Well,
can we
I don't
talk
know.
a little about that? Yeah.
Sure. This is so important. It's so important. First of all, I would say it doesn't mean that that is not an important element. It is true that if you eat 3,000, 4,000 calories a day and you're not exercising, you are going likely to gain weight and not be able to lose it. On the other hand, just calories alone may not be the answer for some people. Maybe for some people it is. They stick to 1,000, 1,200 calories a day. They're exercising, burning those calories, and that may keep them and help them slowly to lose weight. But for other people, it may need to be more of them. It may be related to issues of metabolism, for instance. Some people have a much slower metabolism. And there's also other issues beyond food alone. I mean, how is the person sleeping? We do know that there is this whole issue of hormones at night, that if you don't have enough hours, you're going to be hungrier. So, and therefore you're going to crave for high calorie foods more so. And, so there's so many different factors that you have to look at. Certainly, the calorie is one, but then, you need to think about the quality of the foods you're thinking. By the way, this reminds me of a question you asked earlier about how we have changed trends. Early on, people used to say low fat is the way to go. You can eat carbs, but go low fat. Now we're going in reverse. We say, healthy fats are okay for you. And so, sometimes people change along the recommendations along the way. We as Adventists have always recommended the same thing. You need a good whole plant-based meal. That means not just French fries because you're vegetarian, or just ice cream because you're vegetarian, or whatever, but really fruits, vegetables, as close to their plant origin, non-processed as if possible. Legumes, you need fiber, you need nuts. Some people say, oh no fat at all. No, you need healthy fats. Avocados are good for you as long as you don't eat them 3 meals a day every day. You can have some avocados.
Why not? Gotcha.
Because then it's too much fat. You don't want too much. You do need to go by percentage of an amount of various protein, carbs. And by the way, carbs are not the devil here. It's okay to have carbs as long as they're good carbs and not too much of it. So you want to have whole foods that have complex carbs in it, ideally plant-based ones, but that also have fiber with it. And so it's not wrong to eat pasta or to eat potatoes, but you need to know how much you're eating. So portion size is also important, and how much in comparison to other food nutrients as well. And so there's so many different layers. I would say that if somebody wants to lose weight, we know a few things. One is the exercise is important, and at least an hour a day, by the way, for people who really want to. It's good to start with 20 minutes, 30, but an hour is the ideal, an hour walking at least every day. Second, it is okay how much you're eating, and portion size is important. The other thing is, when are you eating it? If you're eating, oh no, I have patients that tell me, I just eat 1 meal a day and I can't lose weight. When are you eating it? So they eat this huge meal at night before they go to bed. So that does make an impact. Just because you're eating 1,000, calories in that one meal before going to bed doesn't mean that you're going to lose weight. So you need to ideally do it twice a day. Intermittent fasting, as you said earlier, it's one of the things that has shown to be very good for some people. But I just read an article this last week that when they compared people, and it was in JAMA, a very reputable peer-reviewed journal, saying that people who, even though they're losing, when you compare to other diets, they're also losing protein and muscle. And, so there are any diet that you stick to, you're going to lose weight. That's what we have seen in terms of evidence-based information. But there are healthier diets than others. Some years ago, Atkins was a big thing. Well, we learned that no, it wasn't. There were people dying from it, right? And so you need to have that balanced diet with all the nutrients, without too much sugar in it, too much fried, saturated fats, but really a holistic way. But not just diet. You need to look at your lifestyle, your sleep,
Right.
your exercise, and all those other things.
What you said reminds me, my grandmother, my mom's mother, she was from Germany, and she lived to be 92, 93 years old. And she would say, if you're going to eat butter, eat butter. If you're going to drink milk, drink milk. If you whatever you're going to do, just do it in its purest form, because of the chemicals that they would use to take some of the fat out of it. When you were talking about like the low fat stuff, but don't do it all the time, right? Don't like eat butter on everything you eat.
No, definitely not.
Yeah, just eat as naturally as you can, but you don't need to overdo it. And that's another health thing. And we're that is organic. It's organic. As long as it's organic right now, it's healthy. And my mom says to us, because we'll say, oh, look, here's this dessert, but it's organic. And she'll say, yeah, but so what is marijuana? And
That's
nobody
true.
is out here telling us that marijuana is a healthy thing for us to do.
There are some people that say that.
There are some people who say it, but we're not going to say it on this program.
No, 'cause it's not true. So
It is not true. The evidence shows otherwise.
Yeah.
And again,
Right.
this is why we need to go by the evidence indeed, because like you're saying, healthy fats, we have seen there's plenty of research done that they are okay as long as you don't overdo it. They're
Right.
healthy for your, lowers cholesterol. It's good for your heart health. And so you have to look. By the way, I just wanted to say, based on the Adventist Health Study, we have seen that people that stick closest to the total vegetarian diet, meaning they don't have cheese or any animal products, they have the lowest BMI. In other words, the less weight. So it's easier to lose weight if they stick to a total vegetarian diet than otherwise. But again, there's different factors and everybody is different. You have to evaluate.
Right, because not all vegetarian diets are created equal, right? So
Correct.
because we can say, okay, we're vegetarian, but if we're eating a lot of processed imitation meat, or we're eating a lot of cheese or a lot of high sodium, I think a lot of the products have a lot of sodium in them, then that's not necessarily healthier than maybe eating maybe a diet that contains like fish or lean meats. It's better to eat a actual like healthy, well-rounded,
Balanced
plant-based.
Yes.
Sam, you talked about something, and this is something that Sam talks to our group in communication about all the time, and that is sleep, because we are not as a whole great sleepers. And I think I don't know about you, Sam, but my sleep has gotten a little bit better since I've been traveling less. I have been sort of on a more regimented schedule. Before, when I was traveling a little bit more, I was not sleeping very well. I would wake up at 2 or 3 in the morning, and just when my sleep schedule would get back to normal, I would be headed out on a new trip with new complications to my sleep schedule. And Sam, you are on us about sleep constantly, and you have seen this in our productivity. You've seen it impact our productivity and our attitude.
Yes.
Why is sleep? Why do you harp on, I don't want to say harp, but you do talk to us about this a lot. Why is this something that you talk to us about?
No, it's a
Often.
constant rant. I'm obsessed with high performance, right? I'm obsessed with high performance. Since I was a teenager, I realized that I could get a lot done and life would be a lot better if I could be very efficient with my time and I could get things done properly in the best way possible. And when I was in my bachelor's degree, I was doing a degree in theology full-time, 25 hours a week. And they gave me the opportunity to teach English. This was in UNASP in São Paulo, the Adventist University of Brazil there. And I was teaching at first 12 hours a week. So I was 19 years old. And because I studied in England through my teenage years, I could speak English rather well and I could teach it. And I've always liked teaching. So for me, there was a great opportunity. And then they increased the hours and they gave me more classes. And by the end of that year, I was teaching 32 hours a week plus my 25. If you've ever taught before, It is absolutely impossible. It's hard enough to teach 32 hours a week. You need to prepare for the classes. You need to, administer the tests or whatever you're giving. You need to read what the students are writing. And this was extremely difficult. And I had my first year, I got A stars in every subject except Portuguese, because I had just come from England and I couldn't speak Portuguese properly. So that was my lowest grade, but I fixed that by the second semester. And because I wanted the A stars and I was doing all of this, I really obsessed over high performance. How do you do this properly and so on? And the first thing that you would do if you're looking for high performance is that you would jump sleep. Because when you're asleep, you don't seem to be doing anything and you waste 8 hours. And then the next day, what happens? And I learned back then, and I have been applying it since, that staying awake is the quickest way for you to lose your performance. It is a lot better for you to go to bed early and sleep your 8 hours, wake up early and revise the night before rather than the next morning, but still have a little read. You will do much, much better. And I've been reading a lot since. It seems that when we sleep is when our brain organizes all the information you had the day before. It also means when you don't sleep, and this is really important if you believe that morality matters, really important. The frontal lobe, the part of your brain that decides what is right and wrong, the less you sleep, when you don't have enough sleep, it is not as powerful. So you cannot control your emotions. You cannot control right and wrong. And this is why when people are very tired, when they don't sleep well, they're very ratty. They're very angry so quickly. It's like, rah. Why? Because they are not in control of themselves. They don't have that filter in the frontal lobe. So sleep is the best way to achieve high performance. And the reason why I go on to our team is that we have been, trying to do so much over the last 4 or 5 years, genuinely try to do amazing things for God as we try to fulfill our mission. And the idea of not performing is not an option. So it's like, guys, sleep, because if you don't sleep, we're not going to be able to do what we need to do. And I know that a lot of people listening are saying, I wish my boss told me to sleep. He keeps telling me to do this, that, and the other. Your performance will be much better especially if you work in any creative industry. If creativity is part of your job, you need to sleep. Oh, but I have a deadline. Even worse. If you have a deadline, you have to sleep, because in 20 minutes, half an hour, you need to perform really well. And if you sleep well, you can achieve in 1 hour more than you can in 5 when you are no longer, when you lost your sleep. So those are my findings in terms of sleep itself. And I think that there has been so many books written about sleep. I read one every year, and there are people that are all the time publishing new content that is just, as far as I can tell, Katia, they're good, reputable sources that just keep re-emphasizing sleep is important. Sleep is important. Don't let go of sleep, and so on and so forth. So I don't think anyone would disagree with that at the moment. But that's what I found.
Yeah, you're right, Sam. And I will tell you that there has been a recent mega-analysis of a lot of research done in sleep called, it's a book called Why We Sleep. I don't know if you read this one. And this one pretty much has brought to light a lot of things people didn't know before. Sleep is linked to basically every single chronic disease we have, from Alzheimer's to cardiovascular disease to neurological diseases. And of course, we were talking about obesity earlier. It has everything to do with controlling appetite, lowering BMI, increasing glucose tolerance, improving alertness, as you just said, and being able to do things, and also controlling blood pressure and repairing the body. So infections. I mean, there's not one single thing that's not impacted by sleep, and we cannot regain or make up for sleep we lose, unfortunately. So I recommend everybody to read Why We Sleep. You're going to get the picture.
Okay, we'll put that in the show notes so people can click on that link. We're gonna switch gears in a minute and talk a little bit about the current situation we're in right now with the pandemic. But before we do that, we've talked a lot about trends and lies and fake news in health. I want you both to tell me one thing that you wish that people knew, and like, if you had one trend that you see that is maybe the most harmful, And then one thing that you wish that people would keep in mind when they're trying to get healthy, if that's fine. And I'm going to start, Katja, with you.
Good.
Okay.
That's an excellent idea. Starting with
I see Sam thinking.
Well, I think that one thing I wish people knew, and again, I was reminded of this as I watched a documentary recently called The Social Dilemma, and is that a lot of the information that we receive through social media, it is fake. That there is agendas behind it, and it's not necessarily your well-being the goal. And so we have to be very careful in embracing information we see on WhatsApp, on Facebook, and I mean, you name it. You said Google, Google helps us to go, but do you know that even Google searches are different for different people, depending where you are? And again, you can learn more about this watching The Social Dilemma. So the reality is that we have to have trusted sources to go to and ask questions, instead of just believing what we hear on social media. So you're listening to what we're saying. For instance, in this show, it's a lot of things are based on, I'm a health professional. So first you have to see, is the person a health professional? What is their interest in saying this? Is this based on evidence-based, as we were saying earlier, or there's a drug company or some company that's trying to sell you something about health, or there's a political agenda? I mean, we have to ask those questions and then be able to sort through and go to credible sources. And we could give a list here of credible sources people can go to, but I think that is one of the single most important things for people to be able to do, not just embrace and share. Because as we take something, we read and we share without checking, we are oftentimes sharing fake information, and that can be harmful for other people.
Great. Sam?
I want to carry on from what Katia ended there to say that just because, if there was one thing I wish people really internalize, is that just because it's difficult to find out what the truth is, it does not mean there is no such thing as truth. Okay, so let me take a couple of minutes to expand on that. In the 60s, there was a prevailing philosophy that started there and expanded across all universities called postmodernism. Modernism defended that there was such thing as truth and that you could find it. That was a time where we trusted scientists. That was a time where we trusted governments. That was a time where we trusted institutions and organizations. Then postmodernism pointed out the truth, the fact that depending on who you are, you will write texts, you will produce media, you will produce content which may advance your own status in the world. Okay, so if you read the whatever text you read, Shakespeare, it doesn't matter. Whatever text you read, the person writing it is writing it from a power struggle perspective, where they are trying to exercise power over others. And that was the theory. That was the philosophy. The philosophical posturing was, no one writes altruistically. Everyone writes to advance in this power struggle, to exercise power over others. Therefore, you cannot trust institutions. You cannot trust political figures. You can't trust religious organizations. You can't trust anybody's interpretation of the Bible, because they will always interpret the Bible in a way that advances their cause. So, Psalm 23 is interpreted as, of course, the shepherd loves the sheep. The shepherd needs their meat. It needs the wool. Of course, the pastor of a local church is interested in the members. His salary comes from that. Of course, he will say the Bible is truth. His entire existence depends on him determining that the Bible is truth, because if it wasn't, his job is done. Of course, the politician is going to say this. They're just advancing their power over others. Of course, this newspaper and journalist is going to present this view of the world because this is a right-wing publication, or this is a left-wing publication. Of course, this particular news channel is going to have this opinion about the facts. So what we have in the 21st century, after postmodernism has taken on everything, is the notion that there is no such thing as truth, or it's very difficult to find the truth. And I realized this a few years ago with Aleppo. Do you remember the chemical weapons in Aleppo? I actually researched this for 2 weeks solid. I don't know the extent of the chemical weapons that were used in Aleppo. I still don't know. In the 21st century, so bombarded with communication, short of visiting the place, which is impossible, how do you find out? Because how do you trust who said what? The person who first mentioned Aleppo, that, saying these are my last few hours alive, well, he was a verified on Twitter account. And 2 days later, he was posting from France. And that's what the journalist used at first to figure out what happened in Aleppo. The 7-year-old who also mentioned is also verified on Twitter. Have you tried to be verified on Twitter? It's a very difficult thing to do. The journalist that had the photographic evidence, well, there were other journalists that had different evidence. Again, it is very difficult to discover exactly what the truth is in this polarized society that we live in. We have taken away the very notion of truth. In postmodernism, there is no such thing as truth. And then we wonder why fake news is so prevalent. We have removed all of the structures of society that had some trust. We don't trust the church. We don't trust government. We don't trust scientists. We don't trust. Why? Because everybody's in it for themselves. Everybody's just trying to advance their power over others. That's the narrative. And this is a deconstructive narrative. In fact, deconstructionism is one of those philosophies. And it is no wonder that the world is a mess and will continue to be a mess. So just because it is difficult, and what Katia mentioned is absolutely right. When you see something on social media, you have to struggle with it. And nobody likes to struggle. We don't like researching. We just want somebody to tell us what the truth is. Or should I sleep or should I not sleep? What should I eat? Should I do this or not? I don't want to think for myself. Things are hard. Thinking is difficult. Thinking is hard. It's a lot easier just to Google it and pick up the first tab that says at the top. But so if there was one thing, it is this: truth still matters. It still exists. And your present health and your future life, eternal life, depends on you discovering what the truth is. So truth still exists, and you need to think and struggle to find it. That's it. And there's no solution.
Good. But there are some things, before we move on, that doctors and medical professionals agree on, right? So exercise daily, about an hour, like you said, 30 minutes to an hour a day. Get in that exercise, fresh air. Drinking water is a big thing. Don't waste your caloric intake on sodas and juices and stuff like that. Water is still the best option. And, this is funny because I say this a lot. I love the first glass of water in the morning because I feel like it hydrates my whole body. And people say, what is what is the best thing you can do for your skin? And I'm like, if I am not drinking water, as much water as I should every day, the first place I notice it is in my skin. And sort of like the way it maybe will break out a little bit, or I will start to see it. So drinking water every single day is important. Eating a healthy, well-balanced meals, making sure you have plenty of fruits and vegetables. You said legumes and healthy food. So there are things that we can agree on that are a little bit, there are a lot of things we don't agree on, but there's a lot of things we do agree on. Go ahead, Katia.
I was going to just say, you are absolutely right. In science, and I'm talking about health now. I know Sam was talking about, spiritual things as well.
Yeah.
But in terms of health, for sure, there is a system for people to follow. And we do, as you were saying, most people agree in what is good for your health. So, don't fall for the fringes to say, oh, there is a conspiracy against you in this thing. Everybody's against. I'm the only one who's telling you the truth. The reality is most of the things in health, all of that you mentioned, and the things we're saying here, people agree on. So you can find truth. Not so hard, actually, if you just go to the right places.
Well, I
That's a
do.
good point. Let me just
Okay.
mention this here.
Yeah.
I've been working very closely with the Health Ministries Department of the General Conference, and I have to say they are so careful with what they say. This has been absolutely fantastic. It's like, okay, we could say this, but no, let's say it in this way because this is true. This is as far as we can tell based on all the evidence and the three things that Katia mentioned, evidence based that agrees with the spirit of prophecy or that does not disagree. That's a better way to put it with the Bible and Ellen White's writings. And they're very careful, when to say it, how to say it. So what does this mean? Because they're so careful, it means that I personally trust them a lot more. When I visit the Health Ministries website of the General Conference of Seventh-day Adventists, I don't second guess everything that I read because I understand the principles and values that this website, that this information and where it comes from. And I think that's part of that. You need to choose your sources carefully. Are they careful with it? Or are they just trying for clickbait? Are they just putting something on social media so that you can and click on it? That's really important. So I want to publicly thank the Department of Health, the Health Department, for this, how careful you are in putting this through.
Thank you, Sam.
This
is one of our goals.
Yeah.
I do want to switch gears a little bit because I don't think we can get out of this fake news conversation without talking about the situation we're in right now. We are in month 8? Well, technically we're in month probably 11 or of a pandemic. It was declared a pandemic in I think January or
it feels
March.
like 12 years ago, personally.
It was in March, but it began in January. Yeah.
Yeah. So what is time? So we are still in a pandemic that most people thought would be over by now, or at least we would have a pretty good handle on. I have to say, when we left the office about mid-March, there was an expectation that we'd all be home for 2 weeks. It would get cleared up and we would come back to the office. Right? That
was not what the WHO was saying, but a lot of people were believing that. Yeah.
And I remember Sam and you and I were in Indianapolis right before, and we were driving past the stadium and after an event, and somebody said to me, well, we're not going to be back here in June or July for a general conference session. And I said, it's ridiculous. Of course we're going to be back here. Well, guess what? We were not back.
2 days later, nope, not going to be back.
2 days later. Yeah. And not only that, but regularly we're not back into the office again. We've had a very big change, but there is so much misinformation going on around this pandemic, on how to stay safe, on what happens when you get COVID-19, what our immunity does. There's a lot of very important people right now saying, well, once you catch it, once you get it and you beat it, then I am no longer capable of giving it, and I'm no longer capable of getting it. So Katia, is that true? If I have had COVID-19, am I now completely immune to it? And can I pass it on to Sam if I were next to him? And I try not to cough on you anyway, outside of the pandemic, but if I decided not to wear my mask or cover my mouth, could I pass it on to Sam if I coughed on him, if I've already had it?
Well, it all depends. And so again, we have to be very careful how we evaluate this. There are testing that is done. You have to be negative several times, at least a couple of times is what we're saying, to really show that you are no longer able to infect other people. But that does not necessarily mean that you may not to be reinfected. In fact, I just read this morning a news of the first woman who died from a reinfection of COVID-19 globally. So there is the possibility. There is still so much. From the beginning, we've been saying this. There's so much we don't know. There's still so much we don't know. And this whole issue of immunity, we still don't know. We're still looking at, okay, it looks like potentially the person may be immune, somebody, at least based on some of the studies that are coming out, it may be immune for 3 months, 90 days. But is it everyone? Is it absolutely? Again, science is not that precise. So we have to look at the body of evidence. We will only know after we looked in thousands, thousands and millions of people to be able to really recommend, oh yeah, absolutely. Right now, we are not there. Right now, we know that, you are not going to be able to infect others after you're negative. You can, when you're out of isolation, based on a criteria, there's a criteria. You need to be negative. You have to have no symptoms at least 14 days after, so every country probably has theirs, but in the US, we have ours here. You are not going to pass it on to other people, but still you should wear masks.
Right.
Everybody should wear masks and still keep social distancing regardless of that. So that is been the recommendation from the beginning, and certainly it is the recommendation now, that we are very careful with that and wait for more data, wait for recommendations from the top, researchers, because they're looking at this and they will update. And we can't just believe what people say, even if they're important people.
The other thing I have heard is we are reaching herd immunity. We are reaching herd immunity. And I want to read something. I'm going to see if I can find it, because I think it was such an interesting thing that I read. It was on, and I'm going to bring up social media. It was on Instagram. And it said that there are approximately 328.2 million people in the US. To get to the low end of herd immunity, about 60% of the population would have to catch COVID. That is 920 million people. Basically, 196 million people would have to catch COVID. The current US death rate is at 2.96%, which means more than almost 6 million people would have to die in order for us to reach herd immunity. But yet I'm hearing that, this false narrative that we are reaching herd immunity, that so many people have had it. It's okay. We can go out. Herd immunity is achieved. Katia.
No, that is not true. This is not true. Let's make it clear. I mean, we just are still having, people. Again, we are going through a second wave now. Lots of people are getting COVID still. And lots of people are dying, and that is a reality right now. Over 38 million people have had it around the world, more than 1 million deaths, and it is rising. So it's not going down because of herd immunity. And again, we don't know about immunity yet. We're still waiting on data to find out how is this going. Yeah, there's all kinds of theories and potential explanations and things, depending on the country, depending on the where it's being studied, but still there's no consensus of where we are. We still are very much in need, are keeping distance, washing hands, using masks, and trying to stay away from large crowds as much as possible. Going out instead of crowding inside, and all these things. And by the way, the emergency, at least here in the US, I just read it today as well, the emergency pandemic condition here has been extended through January. So this is not going to go before the end of the year. We're still going to be in the same situation of being careful, at least until January or beyond, until a vaccine really is able to come out and we are able to give that to people.
The other one I hear often is we are outside. It's safe to be outside and to not wear masks.
Yeah, again, it's better to be outside. Indeed, we should get fresh air, exercise, and that's all good. But if you are close with people, you should wear a mask. Some countries are requiring people to wear a mask. I had to go in emergency to Brazil, and I was there, and people are required to wear a mask in the streets, everywhere, even if you're not close to us, just to get used to it. So it's part of your clothing, And so it's not a bad thing. We should do that. Of course, if you're exercising and running or doing something, you have to try to stay away from people. It's not good for you to wear a mask necessarily because of the breathing and all that. So ideally, stay away from people. But if you are able, unable to be away, then you should maybe wear a mask even in that situation.
Can we all agree, however, once and for all, that in your car, you don't have to wear a mask?
Yes, you can buy if you're by yourself.
Unless you are giving a ride to someone,
don't give the ride.
Don't
give the ride.
They're going to be in the same environment. Then you wear a mask. But if you are with people from your home, people you've been with, during this time, you don't need to.
Or
Or
alone.
if you're alone.
Yes, I've seen
I,
that. A lot of people.
I would avoid getting a lift or giving a lift to somebody that is not in your particular bubble. It's
Right.
very,
In your
very
pod,
close
yeah.
environment. The aircon is going through. It's a
Correct.
little bit risky for my
I will
liking.
say that I have found that children are better at keeping their masks on than adults are. So
Not my children, Jennifer.
not your child. Okay, so this is different because what I have seen is, my niece and nephew wear their masks and they're running around with their mask on, or I'll pick them up. We are in where I am. It's a very low infection rate, so people are in school personally in limited pods and class sizes. But they get into the car and you're like, you can take off your mask now. When
Now
I pick them up, and they're down the street and they're like, oh, I didn't even really notice I had it on.
That's
Yeah.
excellent.
You get used to it.
We considered, silver tape, the big thick tape. We considered
The duct
that to
tape.
keep it on, duct tape to keep it on. But then we decided against it. It would not be good. But it's very difficult to keep them with the
Really?
mask. You look and then you look again, and where's the mask? Gone. And it's not just gone as in my hand. It's not just gone as in my pocket. It's gone. I dropped it somewhere. Let's find it. But anyway, we try to avoid
Right.
taking them out into indoor places anyway. We usually just go to the woods and forests, and we try to find something
There's
like that, which is
plenty of
safer.
nice parks and things to go where kids can run and they can be okay without being close to others. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, Katja, what I'm hearing you basically say, and we're going to wrap this up now, this conversation, is the best way to avoid contaminating yourself with COVID or to contaminate others is wear your mask, to socially distance, to not be in close quarters with each other, and to wash your hands. And
Yes.
and wash your hands. When we started this pandemic, everybody said we need to be washing our hands, and it sort of made me a little bit nervous because I'm wondering why we have not been washing our hands
Before.
Yeah, I feel like this is something we should have already been doing, but these are the things we need to do. We need to wear our masks. We need to socially distance. We need to not be in close quarters with people outside of our pods, and we need to be washing our hands very regularly. And if washing hands isn't available, hand sanitizer, keep it with you. I was telling Dr. Landless, who is the Global Health Ministries Director, Katja, that when I go to the gas station, I'm sort of like this with my, and spraying. I probably look like a crazy person, but I'm spraying, the handle. So we need to make sure that we're keeping hand sanitizer and that stuff with us. And this is the best way. All the other rumors of whether or not we're immune, whether or not herd immunity is available, if we're outside, these things, we don't know. But we do know that these simple things can help decrease the amount of COVID. And if we don't need to go out, if we don't need to be in public, we should stay home.
That's right. This has been shown. And by the way, Asian countries have been doing this. I remember the beginning of this pandemic, I was coming from Thailand, everybody there in their mask and all that. And I got here, people are like, no, remove you. Anyway, until we all have caught up with the fact that, yes, if we are doing these things, it will have a very small chance of us being infected or infecting others. So let's stick to that. It's simple, in a certain way, compared to having to do all kinds of crazy things people are saying online or for you to prevent. And of course, as we said earlier, keeping a healthy lifestyle in general, eating healthily, sleeping, exercising, watching your thoughts, being positive outlook and all that, a positive mindset all makes a difference. And of course, seeking God, because when we are able to give to him our worries and anxieties about this pandemic, we will at the same time produce endorphins and good chemicals in our body that will help us to better be able to face this situation.
Katia, you've got a project that you guys launched with mental health. I would like to share my screen now, if I may, and you'll guide us through it because it has to do with COVID and it has to do with mental health that we're just talking about. So I'm here at youthaliveportal.org, and then I click
go down a little bit.
Down.
Yeah, right there. Mental health initiative. You could click
Learn
right there.
more. Here it is. Okay.
we are seeing that there's a huge amount of people that are suffering from depressive symptoms, increased suicide. And so this initiative is targeting especially young people 18 to 30, because that's the most vulnerable group. So this website is providing a call to action for all of us to be involved in this, to share on social media posts and things about this, to learn more. There's resources there for people who are struggling, and also for us to share with other people who we think may help. And so there's a lot of free books, free booklets, good credible websites. By the way, we're talking about credible sources. They are right there, credible health websites, courses. And so there's a lot of resources here, both for us to share with other people, as well as for us to benefit.
I notice here you have you can download these resources and publish it on your own social media feed. Is that correct?
Correct, you can. And we are asking you to sign up to be an ambassador of this initiative. So the first step, if you go up high, a little bit upper, yes, there's 3 buttons there, sign up. So first sign up, then share it, which is, download the stuff and share it. And then learn more is about the resources. So very easy. And we hope a lot of people will sign up. We already have almost 200 people who in the last couple of days have signed up.
What is the website again?
YouthAlivePortal.org, and then /mental health. But if you just go to the .org, you get to you'll see it right in front of you.
Katia, thank you so much. I was wondering, and we will make sure that this information again is in our show notes so that people can find it and find Health Ministries very easily. You have a Facebook page, you have a website. All this information is on your site. You provide a lot of information for people who are asking questions. Katia, thank you so much for joining us. I'm wondering, could you pray for us as we close out this week's program?
Sure. Thank you so much for the opportunity. Let us pray. Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, thank you for the opportunity we are having to talk about this so important issues that are so relevant for us, for our families. And Lord, I ask you to please guide each one who is right now watching this show, this video. They may be struggling with certain situations, not knowing exactly who to believe and what to embrace. Give them your Holy Spirit's discernment, the wisdom that comes from you, so that they can really find those credible resources and materials and information that can really make a difference. But more than anything, Lord, draw us close to you so that you can teach us as well. For those that are struggling with COVID and disease in the family, we ask you to be very close to them, give them the assurance that you know what they're going through, and that they may find peace and assurance in your presence as well. And Lord, thank you for the ministry that you have allowed us to share. May each of us be a light and a channel so that we can bless others with the information we share as we reach out, as well as implement in our lives those important decisions for our health and well-being. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. So thank you all for joining us this week on A&N In Depth. We hope we've given you a lot of information and good sources to go and live a healthy life and not get so stressed out by all the fake news that you might be reading. We hope you join us next week. We will be talking about the importance of aligning our voice and having one voice as we move forward. And that is part of the I Will Go strategic plan for the next quinquennium. So we will see you next week. Have a great week.